Today I'd like to talk about how Sotaesan, the founding master of Won Buddhism, created the spiritual community which has now become Won Buddhism, and how he devoted himself to establish the ground of the new order, which he led until he passed away at the age of 53. Master Sotaesan's life has been codified into a series of 10 events, and today's talk will be about the last 3 stages, which come after the Embankment Project and the Dharma approval. In 1916, at the age of 26, Mr. Sotaesan attained the great enlightenment. He then evaluated the current state of the world and felt it was urgent that people living in the modern world to restore their spirituality. So he presented the founding motto: with the great unfolding of a material civilization, let there be a great unfolding of spirituality. Then he began teaching people who are mostly neighbors and relatives. Who else could hear about him? Back then, there was no media or SNS. And within 5 months, he selected 8 disciples who were sincere and firm in their faith. Cheongsan came 2 years later, and together they became the first 9 disciples, the first Dharma group of Won Buddhism. Initially, Sotaesan and his followers had meetings at a Confucian shrine and at a nearby inn. These places were all too small and inconvenient. So while they were working on the Embankment Project, they also began construction of a temple. The members climbed mountains to cut trees for lumber and gathered clay. In 1918, they had built the first Won Buddhist temple. If you go to Yongsan, Korea, where the Yongsan Won Buddhist University is located, you still see the temple site called Bugandoshil. Sotaesan directed the Embankment Project during the day. Then, in the evening, he gave Dharma talks to his disciples in their new temple. Even though it came after a hard day's work, the members rejoiced in learning the Dharma at night. Their understanding the Dharma grew deeper. In 1919, Sotaesan changed the name of the order from the Savings Union to the Association for the Establishment of the Society for the Study of Buddha Dharma. By putting the word Buddha Dharma in the name of the order, it was made clear that Buddhism was the main principle of his teaching. Sotaesan says that we must reform certain portions of Buddhist doctrine and its institution so that more people can understand and practice the essence of Buddha Dharma. This is why Won Buddhism has some different aspects of practice from other forms of Buddhism, while it shares the same understanding of the truth. After the Embankment Project and the Dharma approval prayer, Sotaesan searched for a place to retreat and rest, where he could prepare the beginning of a new spiritual order. He went to Bongnae Mountain and stayed in a small thatched hut. He remained there for the next 4 years, and there he drafted the core Won Buddhist teachings. In 1920, Sotaesan decreed the outline of his new teaching. This was the essential way of human life, comprised of the Fourfold Grace and 4 essentials, and the essential way of practice, comprised of the Threefold Practice and the 8 Articles. Through the Fourfold Grace, he defined the relationship between human beings and the universe as grace. We are indebted to the grace of heaven and earth, parents, fellow beings, and laws, which comprise all things in the universe. Without them, we would not be able to exist or continue. When we acknowledge this and show our gratitude, we enjoy the bliss of the fourfold grace. If we are ignorant of the fourfold grace and remain ungrateful, there will also be unfortunate results. The Threefold Study, I'm sure that many of you are now familiar of the Threefold Study. This consists of cultivation of the spirit, inquiry into human affairs and universal principles, and choice in action. The 8 articles are the qualities we need to cultivate while practicing the Threefold Study. The 8 articles consist of 4 qualities to develop: belief, zeal, questioning, and dedication, and 4 articles to abandon: disbelief, greed, laziness, and ignorance. These basic doctrines are so simple and clear that they help people quickly progress in their spiritual practice in a well-balanced manner. After he proclaimed these core principles of his teaching, he started to draft the first Dharma book of the New Order. In 1927, he published the first draft of the current One Buddhist Principle book. One Buddhist Principle book now consists of 26 chapters. Sotaesan said that in the future, people in the other countries would practice this teaching. The principle of fourfold grace, the Threefold Study, and the 8 articles. These would be preserved as the core principles, while other parts can be adapted to fit other different cultures. According to the document recorded in 1924, the total numbers of the followers in different regions was about 130. And it's interesting that he said that people in the other countries would also practice with his teaching. The numbers of the followers kept increasing, and he became aware that it was time for him to come down from the mountain to open a spiritual order. Sotaesan, with several disciples from around the country, prepared for the founding of the Buddha Dharma Research Society, which was the initial name of One Buddhism. They chose Iksan City as the site for the headquarters. In 1924, they held the first general meeting for the founding of the Buddha Dharma Research Society. 14 followers representing different regions attended this meeting. They declared the beginning of the new spiritual order. In this meeting, they adopted the covenant draft and selected Sotaesan as the governor, according to the covenant. They also selected a chairperson and a secretary. This demonstrated that the new order was not run by only the charisma of one person. From the beginning, One Buddhism was founded as a democratic system. Last year, the central headquarters in Korea passed the One Buddhist Constitution of America. According to the Constitution, Venerable Juksan was appointed as the prime Dharma master of USA One Buddhism and came to the United States. So we are taking about the very beginning step of One Buddhism USA, as it was started 100 years ago in Korea. After the general founding meeting, they began construction of the headquarters in Iksan. 2 months later, 2 units of thatched roof homes were completed. They had barely completed the construction when they had to find the means to operate the headquarters. So they leased the land and raised crops. They made taffy and peddled it from town to town. The profit provided a limited livelihood for the headquarters and provided money for the winter and summer retreats. Their meals were often nothing more than lees that were left over after taffy liquid had been strained. They endured much financial and physical hardship. But every evening after dinner, they got together to share how they handled the matter of the day with mindfulness and to share the progress of their practice. During that time, they held regular retreats in winter and summer, lasting for 3 months each. For their daily training, Sotaesan established the 6 items of mindfulness in daily practice. In order to help practitioners exercise the 6 items, he established the method of mindfulness journaling to help them track of their daily training. And for those who were illiterate or unable to write, he encouraged the use of bean counting. This method I will briefly explain. So first, put 2 different color beans in your wallet or pouch. Each time you're mindful or unmindful, you move a bean to the other pocket and count the number of beans in each pocket at the end of the day. This shows that Sotaesan emphasized a concrete and practical aspect of a spiritual practice. If you want some digital free tools instead of some apps to support your practice, you can try this. It's fun to do. So they worked, practiced, and studied the Dharma together. Their way of life modeled Sotaesan's teaching, Buddha Dharma is daily life. Daily life is Buddha Dharma. In 1935, Master Sotaesan enshrined Ilwan Sang, the open circle icon, at the meditation hall for the first time. Since then, the followers were encouraged to enshrine Ilwan Sang in their homes too. At the time, Korea was under the Japanese rule. Japan colonized Korea in 1919 and occupied Korea up until 1945. The Japanese authorities demanded that all the proceeds from the rituals of the order be donated to the National Defense Fund. The police dispatched their officers to the one headquarters to exercise surveillance over Sotaesan and the order. They placed the ministers in custody many times for many different reasons. They forced the discontinuation of the order's newsletter and restrict the establishment of new temples. The Japanese authorities did not allow the Korean People's Organization. However, since Japan was a Buddhist country, they could not openly stop the activities of a Buddhist organization. Instead, they strictly censored and restricted every single activity of the order. The Sotaesan laid aside all new work plans. Sotaesan frequently pressed for the editing and compilation of the principal book. It was as if he knew that the time of his demise was near. On January 28, 1941, he handed down to congregation his transmission verse. Being into non-being, and non-being into being, turning and turning in the ultimate. being and non-being are both void. Yet this void is also complete. On that day, he said, although the enlightened master of the past disclosed the transmission verses privately only to a few disciples while on their deathbeds, I am handing down the transmission verse in advance to all people. Whether you receive the transmission of Dharma or not depends entirely on your study. Therefore, each of you must cultivate yourself so that you have no regret later on. From then on, he mainly delivered Dharma talks regarding the principles of life and death and of cause and effect at most Dharma meetings. He frequently requested of his students in this way, since I am about to depart for a faraway place for personal retreat, you are to firmly get hold of your minds, even in my absence. The disciples did not understand what that meant at that time. One day, he said to Jeong-san, who later became the second Prime Dharma master, that it would be difficult for him to remain there for long, and encouraged Jeong-san to try to lead the public on his own. Perhaps he knew that he had to go away in order that the order could survive under the Japanese oppression. In January 1943, he issued the doctrinal chart and said, "Herein lies the quintessence of my teaching, and I wonder how many of you understand my true intentions. Only when you tread down the single path with great determination will you achieve success." In May 1943, he gave a Dharma talk at the regular Dharma meeting in the headquarters. As a child grows up to become an adult, an enlightened person awakens to truth to become a Buddha. You are to equip yourselves with true abilities to become teachers to your juniors and benefit all sentient beings and heal the world. Grave is the matter of birth and death, and swift is impermanence. This is something one should not take lightly. This was his last Dharma teaching. That afternoon, his health started to decline. And 15 days later, on June 1st, he passed away. He was 53 years old. 28 years had passed since the founding of the order. Our parents and ancestors gave birth to our body, and it is our spiritual teachers, such as Master Sotaesan, and the spiritual leaders in other traditions, who gave birth to our mind and heart. Now every June 1st, or on the last Sunday in May, one Buddhist followers offer a memorial service in gratitude, honoring the founding Master Sotaesan and all spiritual teachers of the other traditions, and also honoring our parents and ancestors and all those who made us become who we are now. On this day, remind ourselves how grateful we are to be alive on this planet. I hope today we honor Master Sotaesan together and take a moment to remember our beloved ones who have passed away. Thank you for listening to my talk today.